And so let's look a little bit at what eclipses are. This is important astronomical information because not everybody understands the astronomy, but astronomy and astrology, they're in a marriage, even though astronomers don't want to admit that. But astrology just takes astronomy and makes symbolic interpretations, but there's a whole system behind it. So this is a woodcut from the 18th century. It sort of shows how these, the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse will form. During an eclipse, the light of the sun or the moon is blocked. That's just simple astronomy. This is something that I pulled off of NASA's website, but it's a pretty nifty illustration, video illustration of how a lunar eclipse happens, or solar eclipse rather. So the moon is blocking the light of the sun, and that dark, sort of light, not light, but sort of triangle that's pointing out at the moon, that would be where the path of totality for the solar eclipse is pointing. And we are going to have a total solar eclipse in the United States. This will be on April 8th. So this just shows you the light of the sun on the left hand of the slide. It's pointing towards the earth, and then the moon is obscuring it. During a solar eclipse, the moon partially or totally blocks the light of the sun. So as I said, April 8th, it just so happens that it's going to be a total solar eclipse. Although the lunar eclipse that we are going to have just in a few days on March 25th is something called a pre-umbral, God, I hope I'm saying that correctly, lunar eclipse. So the light of the moon is only partially obscured. It's not like a total lunar eclipse, for example. And this is maybe what it's going to look like in the Midwest of the United States, or I'm personally not going to look at it, but y'all can do what you want to do. And then this is just an image that shows you what a lunar eclipse would look like over over a period of time. So even though the light gets obscured from the sun, and then you have this reddish hue that's cast over the moon because the earth is blocking the light of the sun on the moon. So like clockwork, every 6 months, we can predict where the eclipses will fall because of the position of the lunar nodes. Now, this is actually really important to understand. Remember, astrology is first astronomy. The lunar nodes, and maybe this is your first time hearing this term, but they are two of the most important points in your personal astrology that you've never heard of, in addition to your sun, in addition to your Saturn, in addition to your moon, because the lunar nodes, at least astronomically speaking, when they are calculated, they are the point where the moon intersects with the ecliptic as it's going around the earth. And when you know that point, you can predict where there's going to be an eclipse, because when the new moon or the full moon is within a certain degree or distance from that point, get an eclipse. So that's how we know that there's going to be an eclipse, because the solar eclipse that's on April 8th is a certain amount of distance from those lunar nodes, which are presently in Aries and Libra. So again, the lunar nodes are not physical, they are mathematical points. It's a whole webinar on the lunar nodes, but from an astrological standpoint, the lunar nodes in your own personal astrology, this is not off topic, but it's certainly parallel. It tells me the arc of your life. So each and every one of you have a space that your life exists within. Symbolically speaking, I know physically, yes, you hopefully have a home, you hopefully have shelter, you hopefully have all these things, but your life occupies an energetic space as well. And that energetic space is symbolized by your astrology chart. That circle, that wheel, is actually a space. And then that space has a sense of like, why was it built? What is it trying to teach you? What are you trying to learn? What is your mission and purpose? And then the nodes talk about, well, where's the direction of your life? Where do things typically keep happening? And where's the story arc? And for me, where's true north in your life? And that is the North Node. it's just something I pulled off of Wikipedia. It's maybe a little bit too complicated to go into, but it really shows you all of the different ways, the plotting of the, just letting somebody in, the plotting of the lunar nodes and the moon and where the moon intersects with the ecliptic. And that the lunar nodes actually take 18.6 years to make one rotation around the ecliptic. But as I was saying in my example a few moments ago, like the fact that your own astrology opens a space, knowing where the lunar nodes are, it really shows you that there's this axis, like a compass point, that can turn your life in a new direction. So wherever Aries is in your astrology, even if you're saying, but Katie, I'm not an Aries, you have Aries somewhere in your personal astrology, which you will, when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, you will see where Aries is for you, whether it's your sun sign or your rising sign, and that area of your life is going to see in some way a new beginning. So here are two examples of eclipses in action. And just side note, I sort of saw these two examples in the news, and hopefully these are very neutral examples, because sometimes it can get a little dicey picking up people from who's in the news right now. But when I see somebody in the news around eclipse period, I'm like, what's going on in their astrology? And in a lot of cases, we don't have the full astrology. We just, maybe there's a birth date. But in these two examples, and hopefully I'm saying his name right, this is the Prime Minister, which is also called the Taoiseach of Ireland, Taoiseach of Ireland. It's he just stepped down. In fact, he on Leo Varadkar, who was born January 18th, 1979, 5:30 a.m., Dublin, Ireland. This birth time is relatively verified. I think it holds up, considering the fact that he made a surprise announcement just 2 days ago, or yesterday, that he was stepping down. And I was like, what's going on with this guy's astrology? And it not only did it turn out that he is a Capricorn, but I went to a website called astrodatabase.com, and we actually have his birth time. And sure enough, I don't know for those that know not much astrology, but where my cursor is, that's Libra. Where my cursor is, that's Aries. Where my cursor is, that's Capricorn. He's a Capricorn sun, born January 18th. So where the eclipse is happening for him, they're happening in Capricorn's career, Libra, but also the home environment, Aries. This is not to kind of go too off topic and because I really don't know the person, and of course he's a public figure, but this is an example how an eclipse can really mark these major transition points. And I've just noticed that, especially with people who are in positions of power, there can be these experiences where somebody steps down, somebody gets promoted, there's a big step up for somebody. So you might see that he's Capricorn, and he also has the Libra midheaven. Just side note, he's also having a Saturn opposition because he was born 1979. And so this one is actually for Robert Downey Jr. because when they had people in the Oscars, I was like, okay, what's going on in some of these people's lives? And especially with an actor who's been around for a while, so there's probably that his information is going to be somewhere and it's verified. And so sure enough, there was a birth chart for Robert Downey Jr. So he just won a Best Supporting Actor for Oppenheimer. I actually personally really like the movie, but to each their own. He's an Aries. He's an Aries born on April 4th. Yes, the eclipse is on April 8th, so it's a little bit 4 days off, but it's an example of here's an Aries. He's in a dynamic period of his life. The eclipses say that there's some sort of major shift. And basically the conventional wisdom is the closer the eclipse is to the person's sun or other planets, the more powerfully it's registered. And this is not to go into a whole, talk about why maybe he could have won just based on astrology alone, but it's just to give you a real world example of how an eclipse can show up in somebody's life, at least somebody on the public.